You ready to be blown away by a superstar? Someone who has embraced change in the face of transformation in the legal industry? Learn how to embrace experimentation, deal with failure, see something, build something, and be your best self. Let's get into it.
Kyle Bahr is a shining example of growth mindset, perseverance, and humility. From journalist to law firm to in-house counsel and now AI legal technologist, he has turned his passion and curiosity into a superpower. I can't wait for today's conversation with Kyle. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Sal. Awesome to be with you. Looking forward to speaking with you.
I have now done something like 20 of these, and they've kind of gone all over the place for very non-linear, but the general purpose of them is so that people can learn how to become more entrepreneurial, more growth mindset, which I think is a hard thing in the legal industry. We're not really taught that way.
That's
And I think
exactly
it's
right.
really,
We're not
we're not,
business
right?
school.
And I think it's going to be really important in this age of sort of software first in the legal industry and AI and the rest of it. But while we're going to get into all of that, I've learned that my audience really likes to learn about the guest, who they are beyond the profession. And so what I like to start off this with is, Kyle, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you like to do? Do you have kids? Do you have family? Where do you spend your time outside of, being an AI savant?
Yeah, most definitely. So I am located outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I have a wife and two kids, twins, a boy-girl twin pair who are turning 11 at the end of the summer, going into 5th grade. I'm also the proud cat dad now of 4 cats. We just got, a couple days ago, we got birthday kittens for both of my kids. So we have 2 adult cats, and now we have 2 super cute little tiny kittens currently up in my kids' bedrooms, where they are getting used to the house, and it's really awesome. I love spending my free time playing soccer. It's been a lifelong passion of mine. I'm also a lifelong skier. I grew up on the West Coast outside of Portland, Oregon. So Mount Hood and Mount Bachelor were my home mountains, and have grown up skiing. Absolutely love that sport. Makes me look forward to the wintertime when there's cruddy weather. I know that there's snow up in the mountains. We love traveling as a family, especially looking forward to next summer, where we get to combine 2 passions, soccer and travel, here in the States and in Canada and Mexico, when we're all hosting the World Cup in 2026. So really looking forward to that. Hopefully the U.S. men's national team actually makes it out of the group stage. I'm not so sure about that, but we will see next summer.
I love that. I grew up with soccer, unlike you. My father's Mexican, and so since I was really little, I just remember a soccer ball around all the time.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we moved from the States. I lived in Mexico until I was about 5, and then we moved to the States for the same reason a lot of people do, better opportunity and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so the whole rest of my family are like Mexican fans, and I somehow became a US lifer, right? And so it's kind of funny. We'll see how it goes in the World Cup, but I'm also very excited, although how they've looked, well, maybe the last few games is okay, but generally speaking, not great. And it's been a long time coming of this idea that the United States would be a dominant world football team, right? I don't know if that'll ever happen, but it'll be fun to cheer in the World Cup. Have you been to a World Cup?
Never been to a World Cup. I've been to a few pro games, including in England, but I've never had the opportunity to take part in just the huge festivity that's a World Cup. And I don't expect to see any amazing teams, but just to go to matches randomly and just revel in all of the fans around us is going to be absolutely amazing. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've never been either. I've had friends that have gone, and they've said it's just like unlike any experience they've ever had. And I'm looking forward to it. I hope we just put on a good event, safe, happy, everybody enjoys themselves, and hopefully the US does pretty good, makes it another group stage, something.
That's right.
Right. But how did I'm also like a skier. I love sports. Was that something that you grew up with, or how did you get into that love of sports?
Oh yeah, I've grown up with sports. One of my earliest pictures is of me with a really random sweater on that says soccer on it. So like my parents were into sports and got me into sports. My dad, my biological father, he grew up in southern Wisconsin, and so fans of Chicago Cubs, the Green Bay Packers. My grandpa and my dad not really into basketball. But when I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where the Portland Trailblazers are, and it was back in really good days for the Blazers, I got into basketball too. So like sports has always been around me, but I've always been drawn to soccer, and I still play it today as an old man, as I'd say. I'm in the daddy's league. That's what I tell my kids. And so that's a good thing. I was never like that great at it. I played club in college. I didn't play varsity in college, but it's been a lifelong sport and passion of mine, which has been great. And it's encouraged me to stay in shape, try to get some runs in to keep my fitness up. So that's been good. I was also actually, before the law, at this point, a long time ago, I was a sports journalist rather than a lawyer or even interested in law at all. So I've actually had a little bit of a little short professional career in sports, but then quickly realized that sports happen at nights and on weekends. And then you have to work as a sports writer, you have to work nights and weekends. And I decided, let me try something else where maybe I'd be able to work during the day. I don't know if law was actually the best choice for all of that, because I tended to work a lot of nights and weekends in my career, but it's made for a better life for me, I think, overall.
And it's funny. I went to college to become an architect, and I just couldn't afford all the ancillary stuff that you need to become an architect, which I didn't know at the time, right? Like all the foam board and stuff, I just couldn't afford it. And so I ended up doing broadcast journalism, and I love sports. I grew up with sports. And so I was convinced I was going to be a sports broadcaster. And like right as I was graduating and I was like interviewing, and they were like, yeah, you're going to make like 20 grand a year. And I was like, oh, maybe this isn't the greatest idea. And then, I kind of I looked into it more, and I was like, sure, you can make money. You can become ESPN, all the rest of it. But it's a pretty long, hard path. It's a little easier now with social media if you can take yourself off. And so I was like, well, what else do I like? And I was like, well, I like politics. I like writing. I'll go to law school. Very similar to you, kind of just fell into it. Again, not sure it was the best decision for me. I probably should have done something more business related or technology related, but I learned a lot, and that got me here. And, you come back. It's interesting on the sports broadcasting or sports journalism thing, because, in preparing for today, I went back and read some of your stuff like way back when.
Yeah,
Again,
some of it's out there still.
Internet's a beautiful thing. It's like got all this stuff on it, unless you take it away, right? And I thought some of the things you said generally connect back to this broader theme of yours in your life, which is moving forward amongst whatever it is, and finding community is really important. And I thought one of these articles you wrote was actually right after 9/11, and you wrote this article about sports sort of doesn't matter, but it will again. And what I pulled from it was this idea of community, and that sports helps you connect with a broader sense of society and where you are. And I thought it was really moving. How have you interworked sports and your life as you've progressed outside of journalism?
So that takes me back to 9/11. That was a crazy time. And I remember what was going through my mind when I wrote that article. It's kind of crazy where some work that you do sticks with you throughout your life. And I remember that, sports did not matter at all. And in fact, we made an editorial decision for our college newspaper, not to really have a sports page definitely for that day, for September 12th of 01. And I don't remember how many days it took before we brought the sports section back, but because it did take a back seat. But then sports did bring solidarity. You think back, I think there was a Yankees game, New York Yankees game, shortly after 9/11. And that was a huge moment where New Yorkers got to come back together, and after this terrible tragedy in their city, and sports united them. Sports has played a major role in my life going through into the law, because it's allowed me to have a foundation and a community outside of the law, where, especially through soccer, because I've continued to play it It's quite a popular sport now here in the States. I can always go and find like a pickup soccer game happening somewhere in the community where I live in. Or we have a lot of soccer fans and soccer players, including adults. And so like at the middle school just nearby me, we have a Saturday morning pickup. And that's allowed me to meet people outside of my own orbit, meet international folks who are in our area who love the game and come out and play. And it's gotten me beyond my own little orbit. And I've been able to provide that to my kids too, so that they are starting to see that, especially with soccer, with its unique culture and its international culture, they can have a place to go no matter where they are in the world, because there's soccer happening everywhere. So it's been a wonderful thing for me, that particular game, but then sports in general have been really important to me. It's been a great foundation for me.
I love that you use soccer as a way to build community no matter where you are. I have never thought about going and just like find a random pickup game. I should try to do that more. It is universal. So much of the world, wherever you are, you can find that connection, whether you're in a restaurant or a bar. As a kid who grew up in Wisconsin, my dad was actually grew up a Packer fan in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up a Packer fan. My mom's from Wisconsin, and it's the one other thing that no matter, my wife and I love to travel to, and no matter where I am, if I wear something Packers, somebody will come up to me and be like, go Pack, go.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like,
That's
hey,
right.
what's up? What's your name? Right. It's been interesting. And then soccer, right? Same thing. I've introduced my wife to soccer as stuff. We've gone to Premier League games, and she's like, why don't they have this in the United States? This is awesome. And I'm like, they're trying. It's not quite the same, but it's an experience. And for me, sports has been similar to you. It's just an easy way to connect with anybody, no matter what.
The only thing that I really can carve out time for, and just barely, is soccer. And I'd much rather play than watch, just because it's such good exercise and fun.
It is. It's a blast, and it's something I've always loved doing, no matter where I am. But I do want to try to do it, and I applaud you for finding the time to continue to play. And I do think, as much as I love sports and following sports, active, being outside, doing those kinds of things is really important. It's something I try to teach with my daughter, who's almost 5, of like, focus on the outside, focus on doing things, not just consuming the screen or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes she gets mad at me, but she's 5. It is what it is. I'm curious, as you have worked through your career in journalism, making choices, you have 2 young kids that you're raising. How has that impacted your parenting of them, and kind of this broader connection of where you are now, of like where the future goes?
Yeah, the future. The future is tough. I think that just being a working parent, if that's one of the questions here, my wife is also a professional. She's a pediatrician. And so we're in a dual working family, and it's all about just keeping the balls in the air, keeping the juggle alive with the kids. When they were born, I was a senior associate at the Reed Smith law firm here in Pittsburgh, and also spending time in Washington, D.C. with them. And I started to realize pretty quickly that the juggle was getting a lot more difficult, especially having 2 kids at once. Fortunately, Reed Smith had wonderful paternal leave policy. And so after my wife took her leave from work after they were born for a couple months, then I got to spend some really great quality bonding time with them. And so the firm was super supportive of that. When I came back from that, it was just back to the grind, which everyone is kind of aware of from being in big law. And I was just finding, for the both of us, my wife and I, and the 2 kids at this point, that it was really difficult to keep things going and handling all of my new obligations along with my old obligations. And so I started looking for in-house opportunities, but it took a very long time. I think in part because I'm a litigator. Back then, we're talking like 2014, 2015 era. In-house teams weren't so much looking for litigators. They were still looking for the typical transactional person or employment litigation person, rather than commercial litigation. But fortunately, after a couple of years of looking, I've landed an amazing role with a Fortune 500. It was back then Fortune 500. Now it's a Fortune 200 company called Wesco Distribution, and got a role where it leveraged my experience in litigation and in government regulatory work. And so I was there for 5.5 years, and it really did make a difference in my work-life balance. That isn't like the greatest term, I don't think, but it allowed me to handle all of my obligations and made life easier on my wife as well. So that was a great move. And with that move, I started really learning about technology. I learned about legal operations for the first time and legal technology, and started figuring out how to leverage that, not just for myself in my in-house practice, but also for my colleagues in the Wesco legal department. And so that started a little bit of the shift of my career into the legal tech space. The pandemic hit. So I started at Wesco in 2018, pandemic hits in 2020. And with that, I really started diving into how can we use technology while we are all remote to allow us to continue doing our jobs, and during this super stressful time for everybody, hopefully keep our mental health up and just allow us to continue doing what the company needs from the legal department without like sacrificing ourselves so much. And that pressed my pivot even more into the legal tech space. And then ChatGPT hits the scene, and I start discovering AI and bringing it into my work. So December of 2022 is when I really started experimenting with it. And that just shifted the needle all the way over to me ultimately leaving and pursuing a career in legal AI.
I think it's fascinating that you've found this path and that you were so willing to take what others, I think, perceive as a lot of risk to continuously pivot yourself. And the genesis of it was actually similar to kind of how I got into it, which was family, and you can't keep working 100-hour weeks, and I still want to serve and make an impact, but how do I do that? And, as I think about, kind of what my future holds and where things are going, one of the questions I keep coming back to is, how do I consistently still show up for my family while I still grow my career and do all those things?
Yeah.
It's a trying set of circumstances sometimes. And, you had this post a couple of days ago about mental health, and I just wanted to touch on it because I think it's something that's not talked enough about generally in our society, definitely not on LinkedIn, which tends to just be like, I made $100 million sale every day. I'm 16, right? And you're like,
Success, success.
right, without any sort of connection point. And I know for me, I went from large commercial litigation to management consulting, which I thought was going to be better, and it sort of was, and to legal, to starting my own companies. And along the way, there was a lot of failure, right? I mean, and that's just part of it. And it's something you have to learn. And part of the reason I want to talk about it, both because I think it's important, but also I think this idea of growth mindset, entrepreneurial mindset, is actually getting comfortable with failure, that you learn a lot more after failure than you frankly do with success. How did you gain that perspective, and how did you, make it through the down parts where your brain is telling you the mental health side of it, right? Like, this is wrong. I'm a failure. I was this partner, blah, blah, blah. How do I do this thing? How did you figure that out?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in legal education and then practicing law, it's like drilled into you that failure is not an option, isn't tolerated. Everything needs to be perfect. And your mind becomes hardwired for that, to be perfect and to like never show weakness. And part of weakness is your mentality. And so, especially even if you're nervous or if you don't think that you have the best argument, you like internalize that, push it down, and then continue on for the benefit of your clients, for the benefit of your case, and for the benefit of your career. And unfortunately, that's the way that I see the traditional teaching of law and the traditional practice of law. Fortunately, now I think that there is becoming more awareness about mental health, about the fact that we are humans. The practice of law is fundamentally human. And so because of that, there is becoming more awareness about mental health, about you don't always have to be perfect. And it's a difficult shift, both in the whole legal profession, but also at the personal level, about being more comfortable with a practice that's more humane. I wouldn't say less demanding, but more accepting of folks' faults and folks' actual human traits. And we have a long way to go in all of that. But it took me just personally a lot of time to get used to the fact that experimentation is needed when you're trying to innovate. And with experimentation comes failure. It's just a natural part of it. And being able to accept failure and then learn from it and grow from it is extremely important in order to be able to be an innovator, to have that growth mindset. But it certainly, for me, it took a lot of changing the wiring that was in my head from years of practice in order to gain some comfort. Now, because of those years of practice, fortunately, my wife and I had set ourselves up, built a foundation for ourselves financially and in other ways so that I could, when the time was right, take that risk and make the shift into the legal AI space. So I was fortunate because we had this professional upbringing and had done things right financially, both to blue collar kids. We didn't grow up with a lot of money. And we still don't have tons of money, but we had set ourselves up for me to be able to make that move ultimately. And that helped out a lot too. Going to the posts that I put up on LinkedIn and the dark moments that I came up against, those really came after I'd made the shift. It was not so much perfectionism or failure, fear of failure. It was more about, did I make the right move? Leaving the traditional practice that I'd been in for a very long time, going into this super new space, not just legal technology, which had been around for a while, but legal AI, a completely new space, and initially not really finding success. I'd started off just starting my own consultancy, giving that a shot here in the Pittsburgh area. And unfortunately, I had a couple customers, but not enough for things to be sustainable at all. And that really shook me because I didn't know if I'd made the right move. But fortunately, something opened up and I joined a really great legal tech company called Briefcatch and came on as a product manager for them, started learning from some very smart people, and then had more opportunities come up. With those opportunities, so I joined a boutique law firm called Luther Lennard that focuses on the franchisees and a franchise relationship. So a kind of a plaintiff's practice shop, which was really amazing because I felt like I was not just figuring out how to make AI work for a small boutique firm, but I was also practicing law. And so I was representing the little guy, which was something different than I had done really in my practice aside from pro bono stuff. And that was a great experience. But I was finding that it wasn't quite the right fit for me wearing the two hats, wearing both the practitioner hat and the innovator hat at the same time because of the kind of conflict, going back to what we were saying before, the conflict between practicing law and needing to be right and perfect and get things right for the client, and the innovator hat where you need to experiment. Failure not only is an option, but is a thing that comes with innovation. Those started to conflict a little bit. Fortunately, at Luther Lennard, I was able to shift to more of a 100% AI innovation role, and I'm really thankful for that. But it was when I was really seeing this conflict, when I was wearing the two hats, that took me into a difficult place, because I was kind of like, what am I doing here? Is this something that just cannot fundamentally be broken apart? And what can I do about it? So that was part of the difficulty for me of being in a position like that. But fortunately, things have gotten better.
I would seem to say so. And we'll talk more about that as we go in, kind of where you've gone and where you're going. I do think a unifying theme amongst everybody I've had on and anybody I know that is in an entrepreneurial space is this idea that through the valley, sort of a failure, you have to push through, but you really need a support system. And almost universally, it's an amazing partner. Sometimes it's a business partner. A lot of times it's a spouse, right? For me, definitely, right? Allowed me to go off and my crazy ideas, right? Tilt at windmills.
Yeah.
And that was, empowering and helpful. And then a reminder that, almost everything good comes through some persistence, some strife, right? And you learn a lot out of that. I think one thing I always want everybody to listen to here is find examples, real examples, not just ideas, not just the LinkedIn $100 million people, but just basic, I worked hard, I continue moving forward, I did make it to the other side, and there are people out here who are willing to help you get there. And I think that's really powerful message that you have for everybody to hear. Out of that journey that you've made it so far, I heard a couple of things there I think I'd love to dive into a little bit. One of them is this idea of experimentation. AI and where we are kind of currently, and you put aside the Sam Altman AGI stuff, right? Like, believe it whether you want to or not, it doesn't really matter. I think at its fundamental level, in legal and generally, right now, everybody's learning. Nobody has an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that tells you it has an answer is straight up lying to you. And the key thing is to experiment. And you can experiment with software partners, you can experiment on your own, but is to try. And so one question around that is, how did you get that muscle memory to work? Because I think, again, the experimentation thing is hard for lawyers. How did you do that?
I think one of the challenges with experimentation is that it takes time. And for practicing lawyers, one thing that they tend to lack is additional time for experimentation, for innovation, because they're so busy supporting their clients, and then they have their other obligations, family obligations, other things. And so it's finding the ability to carve out time, or finding the right people to go bring in and help with the innovation piece. Efficiency is important then. And so a big part of it is figuring out very quickly who the right people are to listen to focus on, to learn from. In, just like you said, Sal, this super evolving place where nobody really has the right answer for things, there still are people who are building things and understand the AI space and will give you a straight up answer, including I don't know, or the technology isn't quite there yet, whatever. They're not there to try to sell you on anything. They're there to try to help you. And so a voice that I personally look to, not just in law, but more broadly, is Ethan Mollick from the Wharton School, because he is someone who has consistently, from when I discovered him in 2023, he's consistently had just really solid observations about the technology and the trends that the tech is going to. And because he focuses on the consulting space, he understands the professional side, how professionals like lawyers need to use the technology in order to proceed ahead and ultimately, hopefully, succeed using the tech.
What are your thoughts on something I talk about as practitioner versus sort of professor? This idea that I think especially now, yes, you can ask other people to help you. Again, time is a critical factor in why people might not do it. But at least in my experience, the best way to learn how these AI systems work is just to play with them. You have to iterate, no matter how much you read, how much you watch a YouTube video, whatever, you have to actually get into the weeds a little bit and learn. And I don't know how else to get people over that line. And one of the things that I keep telling people is that first 100 times might not be great. But then you'll start to figure out the best way to prompt or how to iterate on that output to get you some of that magic that everybody talks about. And for you, have you chosen certain tools to get through that experimentation phase so that you can sort of iterate and learn? Or do you use a bunch of different things? Where should people start?
Yeah. When I started, it was ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT had just hit the scene, so that was the only tool available. And then Anthropic came out with Claude in like the summer of 2023. And I started using both. And then I started using whatever tools were coming out that were freely available. I would say that actually what folks should do is use it in their personal life before they start using AI in their professional lives. The reason is because there, the experimentation is on your own time. You start to build that muscle, and it totally is. Like I see it as flexing muscle. You have to flex that AI muscle and start to build a little bit of muscle memory of how this stuff works. The using it in your personal life allows you to have kind of lower stakes instances of using the tech. Great example that I have is for my kids. They are soccer players, and so they have soccer practices, and we got to get the soccer practices onto the Google Calendar. I could totally do that manually, and it would take a good long time to get a whole season's worth of practices on. I could also do it because they tend to be regular, just like do a Tuesday and a Thursday and then have them repeat out. And that would automate the process. Or I could try to use AI to do it. And so what I do, especially if there's variability in the schedule, or if you're trying to get the game schedules in, which have variability to them, you can use AI. You can give AI the kids' soccer schedule and tell it, I want to put this into Google Calendar. I need what's called an ICS code written, which is the calendar code, to put this, upload this, it's called import, into Google Calendar. And then you work with AI, building that muscle. You work with AI to create that code and put it in. And you do it once, it takes a little longer maybe than you expected. But then the next season comes around, or you need to do whatever, the gymnastics schedule instead of the soccer schedule, and you find that it goes a little bit more quickly. And at this point, like right now, I'm putting my wife's practice schedule, like her doctor practice schedule, which has a lot of variability in it. I'm using Claude to get that schedule in, where it used to take us like an hour to get everything into the schedule, into Google Calendar. Now it takes me like 20 minutes. So there's just getting used to it on the personal side will then help you bring the technology into the practice side, into the professional side of your life. And you'll have some familiarity with the different tools and how they work, and maybe start thinking of ideas of how the tech can be brought in to augment the tasks that you're trying to perform at the professional level.
If you want to continue building your entrepreneurial mindset and enjoy our content, we would love for you to subscribe, hit the bell, follow along. You can also find us on our Substack, PossibLaw. Abrazos!
I love that. And I think one other tip I always give people in that example that you gave, for instance, is if you don't know how to do it or the right words to use to get the right code out to do the integration and implementation and the rest of it, just ask, right? One of the beauties of it is you can say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to take this variable calendar of all my kids' soccer games and put it into my calendar. How would I do that? And it will oftentimes teach you. One of the things I always love to do whenever I'm learning anything is use the Find 'em technique, which is ask the AI, teach this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Make it
Yeah,
super
ELI.
Yeah. Please teach me like I'm a 5-year-old. And it will, and it'll work it through, and you can learn and then iterate and iterate and iterate. And I think that's the other thing is as important is the first time might not work, second time might not work, but you continue to work through that problem like you would anything else to get to an outcome. And then you can start really seeing a lot of the benefit of where the tools can go. I'm not a big believer in this idea like this is the worst AI is ever going to be, right? That classic thing. I think there's always going to be some structural problems with the transformer models and large language models. I don't think we're getting to AGI this way, but regardless is that if you're willing to iterate and continue to work, you can build systems and frameworks that can help you across a whole swath of things, not just your kid's soccer schedule, right? I'm also curious then, if I'm a lawyer, if I'm a legal professional, if I'm a law student, what kinds of roles do you think are going to be available for lawyers and legal AI, right? You mentioned one, which is sort of product related, how domain expertise on X thing, I help the technology team, the software developers on a product. What other kinds of things do you think domain expertise in legal can benefit in that world?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of being a product manager for 2 different legal tech companies, one Briefcatch and then the other one Udia. And in both those roles, as a legal expert, I served as the voice of the customer. So who's the customer of legal tech? It's lawyers, it's legal professionals, right? So I was the voice of the customer within the company, working with the engineers to design and build solutions that would ultimately delight the customers. And so I would come in with my legal expertise and also kind of the training of a lawyer of being exacting and demanding, just like the customers of these legal tech, right? Being demanding and really looking for faults, working with the engineers to figure out how to design away those faults and deliver amazing results for the customers. So product manager, and there's a bunch of different names. Like I had not just a title of product manager when I was at Briefcatch, but I was also a legal product lead when I was at Udia. Now, other opportunities, there are going to be more opportunities than there are right now, I believe, in the AI era for lawyers, including for junior lawyers. What it's going to take is having really great acumen with AI. So understanding not at like an engineer level, but at a practitioner level, at a legal practitioner level, understanding how AI works and what can be done with AI. That opens up all sorts of opportunities. One that I see probably really proliferating soon is AI governance, especially for companies. Companies need to figure out, not just in the legal department, but throughout the company, how to use AI and how to use it responsibly. And so there's going to need to be an expert within the legal department who helps guide that. So AI governance and policy is going to be a big place. Within the law itself, I do not foresee law firms or lawyers going anywhere for a good long time. A big reason why is because lawyers are needed to help people figure out complexity in their lives. Whether it is what we view to be a small litigation matter, that small litigation matter is super important to whoever is involved in it, right? And it brings complexity into their lives. So they hire lawyers to help them with that complexity, all the way up to the biggest companies in the world, hiring the top law firms in the world to help with complex situations for them. The last I checked, the world is not getting less complex. It's only getting more complex until we figure out a way as a society globally to get rid of some of the complexity. Lawyers are going to be needed. So because of that, just the traditional practice of law and the traditional legal skills and legal expertise is going to be needed by clients and therefore by firms. Firms are going to need to hire more lawyers to continue on with the practice of law. But that practice of law is going to be augmented by AI. It's here. That genie's out of the bottle. It's been around years now, and we're only scratching the surface, but we are figuring out how to use it in the practice. And because of that, what we need are lawyers who know how to responsibly use the technology. So we need legal experts in particular practice areas to continue being those experts, but to also use their talent, their creativity, their smarts to figure out how to bring and integrate AI into their work. And with that, they're going to be able to practice law better and deliver better results for their clients. And that's actually going to make the legal industry better for the people who we serve. So I see a bright future with this technology.
I do too. I don't think the end of the world is happening anytime soon for legal. I think what the world looks like is going to be very different. And I think for a lot of lawyers, young and old, quite frankly, who tend to be very binary in how they think, good, bad, right, wrong, are scared, fearful, and don't like change. And so what they see coming is change. And so they're pushing back on it in a way that I don't think is particularly helpful. Something I talk a lot about is this idea of the gap in available legal services, and whether you want to call it to access to justice, which, you know, I appreciate, but I think if you just focus on business, right? No civil issues, no criminal issues, just business, there's a huge gap in business people and business outcomes and need for legal and the availability of lawyers. It just is, right? In every industry, in every location. And I think any tool that can help with that knowledge gap and give people access to that information is beneficial. And so how that comes about is going to be interesting. For a very long time, the legal industry has actively protected what I call its monopoly by restricting technology, restricting access to information by virtue of bar associations and the like. And, you know, the old LegalZoom lawsuits from 15 years ago, now we've sort of let the genie out of the bottle a little bit. And it seems like everybody it's just here, right? We're here and people are accessing it. And so one thing I like to talk about a lot is this idea of what good looks like. And I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I think a lawyer views good as, perfect example is like a very complex master services agreement or whatever it might be, right? It's 40 pages. It has everything you could possibly ever think of it, versus a business person might say like, okay, I want you to do this. You agree to do Y. We're good, right? Yeah. And what good looks like is important here. How do you view that change in how lawyers interact and how business interact with legal because of the access of information?
When it comes to business, the purpose of lawyers is to help identify and mitigate risk for business people. And risk is a really important thing. Business people understand risk, but they also understand that there's acceptable risk. There's acceptable amounts of risk. Lawyers sometimes don't understand that quantum, that spectrum of risk. And it's kind of like we are risk identifiers and killers. Whatever sort of risk is there, we need to like paper around it, put some sort of clause into the contract. And that causes these contracts to get gigantic and not necessarily helpful. And so a big part of it is partnering with your business client and explaining to them what the risks are, helping them understand, and then ultimately them being the ones who either accept the risk or ask the lawyer to figure out some way to mitigate risk. And I'll actually tell you, you had a question of like, what does good look like in the concept of AI, the AI era, and maybe small business owners who don't necessarily have the budget to go get high-priced lawyers to help them manage the risks that are out there. So I'm actually working on a side project right now. A buddy of mine who's a computer engineer in the Bay Area, I was telling him about experiences and things that I saw when I was working in franchise law, representing franchisees who tend to be small business owners. And the franchisees, when they're being recruited to join a franchise, they are the franchisor is legally required to provide what's called the franchise disclosure document, or FDD, to the prospective franchisee that they're recruiting. These tend to be extremely long, at the very least 150 pages, upwards of 1,000 pages, legal documents that have a mixture of things, including the franchise agreement that's ultimately going to govern the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. So these franchisees, these individuals who are small business owners or aspiring small business owners, this might be the first time that they've ever done anything like this. They receive this large document with 14 days before they sign the franchise agreement and put down what's typically a non-refundable initial franchise fee, which is tens of thousands of dollars. They have a very short amount of time to try to read through this thing, and it's supposed to disclose all of the risks that are involved. But if you have a 200-page document that you, as a non-legally trained person, receive, it's difficult to suss out what a lawyer has written as a disclosure to figure out what's actually being disclosed in there, in the sea of words that they receive. And so these folks, a good percentage of them, very wisely, go and hire franchise attorneys to review these, do an FDD review, and then tell them what the risks are. So just like we were talking about, identifying risks and then figuring out how to mitigate them. The problem is that there's just not sufficient time, or these prospective franchisees don't have sufficient capital to put up to pay a lawyer to really go through this very long legal document with a fine-tooth comb and really identify the risks. There are certain places uniformly that we can look at to identify the major risks, but that is just like a spot check through this long document. It's not a holistic looking through, or even looking through and then referring back and taking that amount of time and attention to address all of the risks that are being disclosed in this document for this small business owner. Well, I saw this problem come up when I was representing franchisees on the dispute side of things. So when things had gone wrong with their franchisor that they had gotten into, and I was telling my buddy about this, and we decided to do something about it. And so we just launched a website that's called freefddlibrary.com. We have a library of FDDs, so that's franchise disclosure documents. We have a library that people can go to and just download. If the franchise is in there, they can download the FDD so that they can review it on their own. Or because I'm in legal AI and he knows AI as well, we have developed a product that's AI based that someone can upload their FDD into our tool, pay us money. So good doesn't equal free. I think that folks are allowed to make some money off of providing good services, but folks can upload their FDD, and then our AI analyzes 101 different risks over 10 categories and generates a report that's written in plain English that advises them on each one of those risks, and also tells them which franchise professionals they should go talk to address those risks. Go talk to an accountant about this issue that we're seeing in the financial statement. Go talk to a lawyer about this issue that we're seeing in the choice of law clause. And that will allow people, ordinary people at a low cost, to understand what the risks are, become better educated clients for their franchise lawyers that they go to, and also be able to maybe provide this report to the lawyer and say, hey, these are the big things that I'm concerned about, which maybe otherwise they wouldn't have identified in their FDD review. Can you please look into these and give me advice about that? And so this is an opportunity to use AI to read where others might not be able to read and connect some dots that might not otherwise be connected. And I think it's actually going to serve some good for this space where there is, and it's pretty well known, there's some abuse that happens by the franchisors toward the franchisees. And hopefully we can help level the playing field a little bit.
I love that because I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. I think we are at the precipice of an opportunity to create thousands of products, solutions that, yes, people will make money on them, and they should. They have every right to, that provide what it was otherwise, quote unquote, legal advice, when really all we're talking about is just identifying risk and helping a consumer make an informed decision. The opportunity before was a closed box. You're not allowed to. Now there's an opportunity to do it in an efficient, productive manner. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. And so I applaud that. And frankly, I can't wait to see what else comes, because I think there's an opportunity to create solutions in a way we just couldn't before. And so hopefully that does do a lot of good for just society in general, right? Because again, I think there is a real problem. There just aren't enough, quote unquote, licensed lawyers to do the amount of work that is out there and necessary to be done for people, right? Of all stripes of life, all business, across the board. That also brings up another question I have for you is, as you've gone about getting into the legal field, legal AI, and developing a product, I think what I've learned is that this is a complicated thing. It's not as easy as just connecting documents to OpenAI and saying, here, Genie, please give me the thing. You have to actually understand a lot of semi-technical things related to how the models work and parsing the information and connecting tokens and chunking and the rest of it. How do you think the legal profession, if you're a lawyer or not, can start learning about some of the more technical parts of this? Because one of the things I've thought about is that, we have, vibe coding right now where you can sort of prompt in something and it'll create an app. I think we're at an opportunity where in-house legal teams, law firms, you're a domain expert, you have an idea. Before it was closed box. I don't know how to code. I don't even know how to do no code. How do I do this? Now we might be an opportunity to say, I have an idea. Let me see if I can just generate this solution right now. What are the key things you think lawyers, legal professionals need to learn that aren't technical per se, but will help them get further along? That could be things like context engineering or prompting or the workflows, whatever it might be. What do you think people need to start learning?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to not be overwhelmed. Learn how not to be overwhelmed, which can be difficult because things are changing so much, but the fundamentals are still the same from late 2022. Context is really important. And so what is context? Context is what you're providing to the model for the model, the large language model, to be able to generate an output that's helpful to you. And so I've used, since 2022 and 2023, I've used the same technique for providing context. And it's quite simple. It's just telling the model who I am, which it doesn't actually have to be truthful of who I am. It's who I am in order to get the best output. So who I am, who it is, what I want it to be an expert in, and then just giving it whatever information it needs in order to churn out what I think will be the best result for me. So a great example, like Sal, earlier you were talking about, explain it like I'm 5. So tell it ELI 5, not, hey, I'm some great lawyer, blah, 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 but explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. I am a 5-year-old. And then tell it what it's an expert in. You're an expert in AI prompting, and then give it the information that it needs. I'm trying to figure this and that out, and it's just not working for me. What can I do? And then have a conversation with it. I think that's something that folks aren't quite yet familiar with. unfortunately, with AI is the fact that unlike Google, where you throw in your query and you get your result and that's it, you just go click your links. With AI, you can have a conversation and that conversation can lead you places. And all of that conversation is context for what comes out next in the conversation. And so by kind of artfully guiding the AI toward what you're trying to get at or telling it it's doing things wrong, you're looking for something else, just having a almost natural conversation with it, you can get to an answer, hopefully, that you're looking for, something that's helpful for you. Technically wise, I don't know how much technical stuff we really need to know. There are more engineers who are coming into our space who will be able to help supplement us on the technical side of things. My buddy in the Bay Area, he's the technical wizard. I defer to him on some stuff, but I tell him like what it is that I'm trying to get at. When I was a product manager, the AI engineers who I worked with were absolutely brilliant. They knew way more about the technical stuff than I did, but I was able to explain to them what it was that we were trying to get at, explain to them how lawyers work, which is an interesting thing to do, to like really get inside of how we work and then explain it to other professionals from a different profession. But we don't need to get too deep into the weeds of the technical stuff. I don't think we can use the AI to help us get through that. Maybe the biggest thing to understand is that it's all statistics at the bottom of it. And these large language models are built off of the statistical relationships between pieces of words. Like I see the kind of brain thing behind you, right? So like those nodes there represent in a way, in a very simple way, what a large language model kind of conceptually looks like. And it's just the amount of relationship between a piece, a token of a word and another token. And then it's just all those relationships for all the pieces of words in all of the written world. And now we're getting into vision and other things like that as well. But understanding that it's just statistics and the probability that one token goes with another is how this works. That will help understand things like the hallucination issue and help folks understand how to get more out of this technology, because it's not an oracle. Just like you were saying, you don't go to Mr. OpenAI and get the right answers all of the time. It all depends on how you're providing the context and what you're hoping to get, and understanding that you have a percent likelihood that you're getting the right answer, but it's not typically 100%.
I think that's great advice. Something I saw you post, I think a while ago, was this idea of be curious, be agile, be ethical, which is, it's exactly what you said. Be curious about how it works so that you can better leverage the tools in front of you. Agile about the constant change, kind of keep improving yourself, and be ethical on how you use it and why you use it. Again, I know you are an advocate of all the AI hallucination citations, which is great. For me, it just comes down to like standard old school, seemingly not doing your job lawyers, right? Like just like read the thing you posted, look at what it is you did. This isn't really related to AI, but it is to some extent a function of a belief in how a system works, which is again requiring software developers, people who are building solutions, to be empathetic about the end user, the consumer, what they think when they don't think, and making sure you give them the opportunity to use it in the most ethical and best way they can. And so I love the way you talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about your recent, first you're joining Udia, and your recent announcement as of like 3 days ago that you are leaving to go to another opportunity. First, I just want to talk about Udia briefly, because I think it's a fascinating company that has a real opportunity to make pretty significant change. So tell me a little bit about Udia.
Yeah, Udia is a wonderful legal AI platform and team that focuses on Fortune 500 in-house legal departments, the chief legal officers, general counsels, and their team, and bringing real AI solutions, not as artificial intelligence, but as augmented intelligence. And so the idea, the mission for Udia, and it's something that I really connected with when I was talking with the team about joining them, was the idea of augmented intelligence, of using AI in the practice of law, not to replace lawyers, but to elevate lawyers, enhance the work that we do, because that's what I've seen with my own usage of AI in legal practice, is that it has made me into a better lawyer. It's helped replace tasks that I don't necessarily enjoy doing, but that's allowed me to take more time and attention to the things that I do enjoy doing, the things that have the human deliver value to the clients, whether it's for the Fortune 500 teams, their internal customers, internal clients within the company, or more broadly in the practice of law for the clients that we serve as lawyers. I've found that AI has allowed me to become more productive, in that it allows me to do my work more quickly, but also when done right, it makes the quality of my work even better. And those two combined is what I see as the productivity, is like the 10x lawyer ideal that we're trying to get to with this technology. Udia is doing some amazing things. I can't really get into much of that, but the team is made up of extremely bright, brilliant AI engineers who are working to create amazing solutions for the in-house teams that are Udia's customers. And there was actually just an announcement today that I saw on LinkedIn that Udia has acquired an ALSP. And so there's going to be even more use by the ALSP team of the technology that Udia is creating to deliver really great solutions for Udia's customers. I'm super excited. I was super excited to join the team. I was bittersweet actually to leave, but I left because an excellent opportunity came my way, something that I just could not pass up. So I'm happy for myself, but was sad to leave the team.
You know, it's important to do what is good for your career as well, Kyle. As benevolent it is still a business. And so I would love to understand where you're going. And I want to say for our audience, you know, Kyle isn't there yet. He isn't speaking for this new company.
While we're recording. Yeah, that's
while
right.
we're recording, it's literally brand new. And so, but I did want to discuss it because I think it's an interesting nexus of where legal AI is. And so why don't you tell our audience where you're headed?
Yeah, that's right. And Sal, just like you said, my comments and my thoughts are completely my own, but I'm really happy to announce that I'm joining Cleary Gottlieb and their amazing innovation team. I'm being brought on as AI innovation manager, and I'm going to be supporting the firm's 1,200 plus lawyers and their staff, and hopefully their clients, in figuring out how to make AI work responsibly for one of the top law firms in the world. I'm extremely excited for this opportunity. I'm very humbled by it. I'm excited because I'm going to be working with some of my friends who are already on the innovation team and forging some really great relationships within the firm, also with the firm's vendors. And of course, Cleary made the news a couple months ago because they acquired an AI company called Springbok. And I'm looking forward to also hopefully coming in and collaborating with the engineers that are there and leveraging some of that product management experience that I already have to not just look at the buy side of AI, but also look at the build side.
I think it's fascinating for a bunch of different reasons. Obviously, you've come full circle. You went from like big law all the way back to big law much later.
Yeah.
But also you were at Udia, which is focused on in-house teams, versus a big law firm, which is obviously external, selling to in-house teams. And so you have in law firms, I think, which is an interesting product evaluation build for you, which is you both want to service the lawyers in the law firm and help them do better work, but also be cognizant that the buyers have certain expectations about what those products might be. And maybe you're going to sell some products to them related to what you're doing, because law firms are uniquely built in that they have all this knowledge and data. And at the end of the day, data is king, and how you leverage it is really important. So I'm curious, obviously, to the extent you can talk about what you're going to do, what you think you can do there that is going to be really beneficial, and what's interesting to you about the role.
And I think, too, I've been a customer of large law firms as well, having been in-house for 5.5 years. So I bring that practice experience of having been in big law at 2 different firms. I started my career at White & Case, and then was at Reed Smith, Fortune 500 in-house at Wesco, and then having been in legal tech as well as a product manager. I bring all of that experience into this role, where right now it's extremely fertile ground of early days in the AI era, an amazing firm that already has and has traditionally had an entrepreneurial spirit at Cleary, a firm that has shown its investment in AI with the purchase of an AI company, and also a really well-published relationship with Legora, one of the top legal AI platforms, as well as other vendors. This is a place where I'm looking forward to thriving, and thriving in the ability to support all of the practice groups, all of the lawyers, all of the staff, all of the professionals within the firm, helping them get their arms around this technology and really get that productivity that I was talking about before that I found in my own practice. And I don't have all the answers yet. We're figuring out what my kind of first couple of months are going to look like, but the rest of 2025 is going to be extremely interesting for me and for the team by bringing me in and having me bring my practitioner's perspective to the technology and my builder's perspective to the technology. So I'm extremely excited for what's coming up, not just this year, but in the years to come.
I think they have chosen very well. I think
Thank you.
one of the big things that is missing in a lot of law firms is, for whatever reason, a lack of practical perspective in how the buyer, the legal department is interested, but also the builder perspective of how this all works and how it connects and how it can really be beneficial and not just a reduction in the classic billable hour, right? And so I think you have a huge opportunity in front of you, a lot of work, but I think they found somebody that's going to be a great fit there. And so I'm really excited to see what you do with the team. As we close out today, I think it's fascinating to listen to your journey, Kyle. You've really followed your curiosity and your passion to find new opportunities and get where you are now into a whole new horizon. And so I know everybody that's listening really appreciates your transparency in talking about both your struggles and your successes and where you want to go. And so I always like to ask at the end of the show, what do you want people to take away from listening to you today?
Here's the biggest thing that I think as a profession, all legal professionals, lawyers, folks who haven't gone to law school. I started my career as a paralegal in the law after I switched from sports journalism. We have this, I think, misidentified perception of ourselves of not being tech savvy, of not being open to change. But just look back 10 years and the way that we were practicing law 10 years ago. Or if we want to put a bigger thing for those of us who have been around long enough, like I started my legal career and my lawyer career in 2008, and e-discovery was just starting then, right? When I was a paralegal, we were doing paper box document review, okay? So the practice of law has changed, and we have changed with it. Whether we recognize it or not, whether we like it or not, we've changed, and we have the capacity within us to change further and to change for the good. This technology, AI is something that we can really harness to make the practice of law better, not just for our clients, but for ourselves. I've found that in my own experience. I know it to be true in my core. It's a big reason why I decided to make this pivot into legal AI, is because I see that it is a good thing. We have it within us to really embrace this. These things are large language models, language. Lawyers and legal professionals, if we're not masters of language, we're better than most people when it comes to language. We understand the nuance of language. We understand the nuance of punctuation. We know that if a comma is moved from one place to another, it could change the whole thrust of a sentence. If we start to see that within ourselves and understand that that is how you can communicate with these models and get more out of the technology, then I think that we have a really bright future with this technology. And I know we have it in us. And I just hope that my colleagues in the profession start to see that within themselves, because they really do have the gift to be able to work with this tech.
What an amazing way to end today. I love the passion and the impact you want to drive in our legal profession. And I 100% agree with you that I think we have it in us. Let's just keep moving forward, and having more people like you in the industry pushing that forward is better for everybody involved. So thank you again for being on the show today, Kyle. I can't wait till we do it again.
Likewise, Sal. Thanks so much for having me.